question has clear-cut demands, that is, we need to mention what do we mean by 30 by 30 initiative. Thereafter, what were India's achievement and can India achieve this target, and finally we need to conclude. So first things first, what is 30 by 30 initiative, right? इसके बारे में we should be very much clear. So 30 by 30 is basically the third of 23 global biodiversity targets for 2030 in Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework that was adopted in December 2022. So what happened? Biodiversity is a very important issue, and for biodiversity conservation there was a meeting, right? And in this meeting, this framework or initiative, it was adopted. So it implies, this initiative basically imply that protection of at least 30% of the world's land and ocean has to be ensured. So it is very simple. By year 2030, we need to what? Protect 30% of world's land and oceans, right? And the aim is very much clear, that is to halt the accelerating loss of species. Species are increasingly getting lost, and to protect vital ecosystem that are source of economic security. Thereafter, very important to note that it is the first global framework on biodiversity since Aichi biodiversity targets were agreed upon back in 2010. So this all we should know with regards to 30 by 30 initiative. Also, it was endorsed by more than 100 countries, which included European Union, G7 and India. And according to a study by McKinsey and Company, if the world is able to achieve the 30 by 30 target, so it could generate up to 700 billion US dollar per year by year 2050. So question में क्या पूछा गया है? We need to address that part, and this is the official word by word of 30 by 30 initiative, that we need to ensure and enable that by year 2030 and at least 30% of terrestrial, inland water, coastal and marine areas, especially areas of particular. So this is given, but we need to ensure that we do not cross the word limit. इतना सब जो डिटेल में है उसको आप कैसे लिखेंगे? That is simply implies protection of at least 30% of the land and the seas by 2030, right? Thereafter, the second part was what were India's achievement at this particular Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. So what was India's achievement? So first achievement was with regards to India's pitch for life, that is lifestyle for environment and common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities. It found echo in the framework. So this was India's achievement. Also, India contributed in developing consensus on several issues which are related to developing South. And what is the example of that? Example is India pushed hard for this DSI. What is DSI? Digital Sequence Information. And it was finally adopted as a part of this historic deal. Yes, of course, this is historic because this is the first global framework after 2010, after Aichi targets. Right. So India pushed hard for DSI. So is it not the achievement of India at the summit? Definitely it is one of the achievement. And this DSI is DSI se hoga. This DSI would ensure steady flow of funds. Right. It will ensure a steady flow of funds to the countries such as India, which are rich in biodiversity, and the fund would be given by the biotechnology companies, which assess our biodiversity and related genetic information. Right. So it is a win-win for both the stakeholders, and it would also help the indigenous communities. Now this word, it should come into your answer when we have to write about this 30 by 30 initiative, right? Who conserve the biodiversity and associated traditional knowledge. Thereafter, the final part, that is, can India achieve the target or not? Yes. Is it possible for India to achieve this target or not? So how would you write the answer? Definitely it is possible for India to achieve, but how is we have to mention. And certain other facts was related to biodiversity. If a question comes about biodiversity, तो हमें कुछ additional information भी पता होना चाहिए. That is, India has 8% of global biodiversity, and it has 4 cross-border biodiversity hotspots and a high degree of endemism. Now, this is not explicitly been asked from us, but this we must know when it comes to biodiversity. And what are the 4 biodiversity hotspots that India have? These are Himalayas, Western Ghats, Sundaland, and right? Yes, please answer the 4th one. Which is the 4th one? Please do comment down that what are the 4 global biodiversity hotspots. तो वो हमें पता होना चाहिए. Also, we should be aware that we can leverage India's rich cultural and religious traditions that value nature and promote conservation ethics. देखिए क्वेश्चन क्या है, can India achieve this target? Target किस चीज का? That India can it protect 30% of the land and 30% of the oceans. So overall we need to conserve and protect the nature, and it is in our culture to respect the nature, to protect the nature. So definitely we can achieve this target. It is also reflected as a part of Constitution, Article 48A, Article 51AG. Also, India is a signatory to CBD, that is Convention on Biological Diversity, and it seeks to integrate OECM. Now, this is a key word which must come into your answer. What is OECM? OECM is basically a type of conservation strategy. आप सभी ने पढ़ा होगा किसके बारे में? In situ conservation, ex situ conservation, protected areas network. So similarly, we have this other effective area-based conservation measures, right? Also, India is a part of high ambition coalition. So for nature and people. Now, all of these, they would eventually help India to achieve this target only, right? And India has voluntarily pledged to restore 26 million hectares of degraded land by year 2030. Again, it would help India to achieve this particular target. And now the focus is on biodiversity heritage sites, right? And India has already achieved close to 27% of area under conservation. So it is well within India's reach to achieve the 30 by 30 target. Also, we can leverage the technological aspects, and also we can leverage the cross-border cooperation with regards to biodiversity conservation, right? So we can harness India's technological innovation and leadership in fields like renewable energy, biotechnology, space research, and IT to support the conservation efforts, right? And we can collaborate with other countries. Thereafter, how do we conclude this? How to conclude this? We have to conclude this on a positive note, that we have already mentioned 30 by 30, we have already mentioned India's achievement. And can India achieve this? Yes, definitely India can achieve this. So on a visionary note, we have to conclude this, right? On a positive. Don't use the negative tone. Yes, there are challenges, there are problems, but they have to be addressed properly and adequately, and India definitely will achieve the target, right? So there are certain ways we have to balance conservation and development activities. We have to, for that to happen, we need to mobilize financial and technical resources. what are the opportunity cost, what is the consumption needs of the affected stakeholders. We have to enhance the coordination between different ministries and everything. We need to strengthen the scientific basis and the data availability. Also, equitable and inclusive governance of the protected areas. So if we ensure all of these, so definitely India will achieve the target. So I hope this is clear. Moving to question number 2. Now the question reads, plastic usage is threatening marine ecosystems. Discuss the impacts of plastic pollution on the environment. Also suggest measures to fight against the menace of plastic pollution and protect marine life. So, plastic usage is threatening marine ecosystem. This is given as a statement. We need to discuss, right? We need to discuss what are the different impacts of plastic pollution on the environment. That is the demand of the question. Thereafter, we need to suggest measures that how we can fight against the menace of plastic pollution and protect the marine life. Right. So first things first, plastic when it was discovered, it was considered what? A miracle, a wonder material, but now it has become an existential threat. Plastic, the invention of plastic has revolutionized the way we live. The material is cheap, durable, versatile. It is actually making it ideal for a wide range of application. But now, unfortunately, this has led to increase in pollution, particularly the marine ecosystem. And this term, microplastic, it was coined in 2004 by British marine scientist Richard Thompson. Now, please pay attention. This has not been asked as a part of the question, but still these facts, they can help you wherever they are more relevant, right? And you can also mention about plastic classifications. How can you mention that macroplastic? What is the dimension? Greater than 5 mm. Then we have the microplastics, and then we have the nanoplastics. Now coming to the main part, that is discuss the impacts of plastic pollution and environment. How plastic is wreaking a havoc upon the environment. So we can have a schematic that there are different impacts. For example, there is entanglement and suffocation. What is entanglement and suffocation? The plastic इतना ज़्यादा हो गया है oceans and water bodies में that marine animals, they get stuck, right? And they get injured or even death. Thereafter, chemical pollution. Why chemical pollution? This is the impact of plastic on the environment, because these plastic, they have variety of chemicals like bisphenol, flame retardants, which can leach out and they can contaminate the soil, the water, the air, and these are definitely very harmful for the animals, for their reproductive ability. Then we have microplastic ingestion. Now this one problem is very much pervasive, right? That microplastics are ingested not only by marine animals, also by humans. You will see. Plastic waste, it can break down into tiny particles and it enters the food chain. It enters the food chain, and as a result, human beings are also affected by microplastic ingestion. You can mention about bioaccumulation magnification, उससे relate कर सकते हैं इस चीज को. Thereafter, habitat destruction is also a negative impact of plastic pollution, because it basically alters the ecosystem. The plastic debris, they cover the ocean floor, and when they cover the ocean floor, the sunlight is unable to reach, and if the sunlight is prevented from reaching the plants and animals, So definitely it would have an impact upon the productivity of the ecosystems. So all of these are impacts of plastic pollution on the environment. Now this is one such method of writing in the examination. Also, you can use a schematic like this, that there can be physical interaction, there can be chemical interactions, and what are their effects. Like entanglement, it would result into what? Behavior or locomotion issues. Ingestion would create what? Breathing and oxygen uptake. Colonization would result into dispersal or migration. So this is also one method of writing your answer. And in order to get good marks, we need to have some facts, data and reports, right? So there are a number of facts and data I'm just placing over here, right? So you can just note down that according to WWF, Worldwide Fund for Nature's Living Planet report, sabhi ne padha hoga, 90% of world's seabirds, they carry plastics in their stomach, and this 90% would increase up to 99% by year 2050. Now, this is alarming. Also, you can mention about IUCN, that IUCN has stated that tires are the second biggest source of marine microplastic pollution after the textiles. Right. Also, UNEP 2021 report, it states that global plastic production, it has risen exponentially in the last few decades. That is 400 million tons per year. And yet only around 12% are incinerated and 9% are recycled. Now, some of these facts or data, you can also use them as a part of introduction of your answer. I'm just placing different set of reports, datas. आप इनको note कर सकते हैं, wherever you find them suitable, you may use them in the actual examination. So it is also estimated by United Nations that by year 2050, there would be more of plastic than fishes. Thereafter, what measures do we have to fight against the menace of plastic pollution and protect the marine life? This is what is the last part of our question. So we have a number of suggestions for that. Starting with reduce the plastic use. If we reduce the plastic waste itself, then definitely it would have less impact. We need to promote what? Recycling. We need to ban single-use plastics. We have to innovate packaging. There have to be cleanup initiatives, like UN has Clean Seas campaign. Then public awareness and education, IEC, information, education and communication. Then we need to support research so as to find alternative solutions for plastics. Improve waste management. This is very crucial. If we improve the waste management, then we can prevent the plastics from entering marine ecosystems. So this is very important. And for that we have certain rules also. International cooperation is required. Legislation and enforcement is required. Like we have Plastic Waste Management Rules 2016 and further amendment in 2021. Extended producer responsibilities. So please mention these keywords. Also the same, we need to encourage what alternatives, sustainable practices are to be promoted, green packaging policies. Then very important, fishing gear management. Here please mention about ghost fishing. What is ghost fishing or ghost net? देखिए ghost fishing or ghost net कुछ भी नहीं होता. It is simply there is fishing activity done, and at times it has been found कि जो fishing gear है, fishing equipment है, it just stays below the water, right? और उसमें what happens? The marine life, the marine species, they get stuck, they get entangled. So fishing gear management has to be proper. Marine protected areas, very important. MPAs, marine protected areas. Special care is given so as to conserve the marine ecosystem in these marine protected areas. And remember few examples like we have in Weddell Sea in Antarctica. Also we have marine protected area in southern slope of Antarctica, South Orkney Islands, right? And then we have consumer choice, because when we make informed choices as consumers, it can drive the market demand for environmentally friendly options. So we have a number of ways so as to check the menace of plastic pollution. I hope this is clear. And finally we conclude. Finally we need to conclude it, right? Then how do we conclude? That yes, it's true that plastic is a problem, but with adequate steps it can be prevented, right? Else pollution, biodiversity loss, please pay attention, this is very important. Biodiversity loss and climate change, these are what? These are triple planetary challenges or crisis. Sorry. So pollution, be it of any form, and the biodiversity loss and climate change, these are what? These are triple planetary crises that the world is facing, right? Thereafter we have question number 3rd. Now please read the question, what it says. So question number 3rd is, what do you mean by grey water? Discuss the effects of wastewater pollutants. Mention the government regulations and initiatives to tackle the wastewater management. So first thing is, what do we mean by grey water? Then effects of wastewater pollutants हमें बताना है. Thereafter, what are the government regulations and initiatives to tackle wastewater management? So what do you mean by grey water? So grey water is used or wastewater. It is used or wastewater that is free of any fecal or urine contamination, but it still contains some chemical and biological particles such as ash, soap, detergent, particles, grease, etc. So grey water is nothing but it is the used water, like from the domestic usage we have kitchen wastewater. So it is generated from various domestic and industrial activities. And wastewater treatment, it is also called what? Sewage treatment. It is nothing but the removal of impurities from wastewater or the sewage before it actually reaches the aquifers or the natural bodies of water such as rivers, lakes, estuaries and oceans. Right. Thereafter, UN Habitat, United Nations Habitat, it has commenced a new global consultation to reiterate what? To reiterate the crucial role of wastewater management in water cycle, so that our cities are more sustainable and more livable. Then You can also mention principles of grey water management, that is use less fresh water, generate less grey water. Thereafter, reuse this grey water, it can be used in some particular cases. Now, obviously, this cannot be used for drinking purposes, but it can be used for gardening and other such purposes. Also, recharge, allow the grey water to percolate into the ground and replenish what? Replenish the groundwater. Also, it is very important and necessary to build upon the gains made in Swachh Bharat Abhiyan phase 1, this grey water or waste water management. And it is an important component of phase 2 and Jal Jeevan mission also. Thereafter, how to select grey water technology. Now, this has not been asked in the question, that how do we select grey water technology. It has not been asked, but still, if a question comes exclusively upon this, or if you find some relevant areas, then you can mention this. That is, factors which affect the choice of grey water technology are its usage, what is the volume of the discharge, what is the space that is available, the type of terrain, and the level of water table. Now comes very important, very crucial part that discuss the effects. What are the effects of waste water pollutants? क्या effects हो सकते हैं waste water pollutant? तो सबसे पहले तो हमें यही clear होना चाहिए कि waste water pollutant, what are the examples of these? What are the sources of waste water pollutants? And how do they impact our ecosystems? So if wastewater is not treated properly, it would have negative impacts both on the environment as well as on human health. Like the decaying organic matter and the debris, they can use the dissolved oxygen. आप सभी ने पढ़ा होगा biological oxygen demand, chemical oxygen demand के बारे में. So decaying organic matter and debris, they can use this dissolved oxygen, and if this is used, so fishes and other aquatic biota, it cannot survive क्योंकि वो consume हो गया, right? Second, what happens? Excessive nutrients such as phosphorus, nitrogen, they can lead to what? They can lead to eutrophication, and eutrophication again, it can cause what? Harmful algal blooms, which is toxic for the aquatic organisms. And again, there is a issue of available oxygen. It would harm the spawning grounds, habitat would be what? Degraded, and there would be decline in species. First things. Second, thirdly, you can mention that chlorine compounds and organic chloramines, they can be toxic to the aquatic invertebrates, algae and fishes. So what you have done, wastewater pollutants, और उसको आपने just nitrogen, phosphorus, chlorine, this way you have made a point. Also bacteria, viruses and disease causing pathogens, they can pollute the beaches and contaminate the shellfish populations. And this would restrict what? This would restrict this would have restrictions on human recreation, drinking water consumption and shellfish consumption. So do you see how we are relating effects of wastewater pollutants on different dimensions? Thereafter, metals such as mercury, lead, cadmium, chromium and arsenic, they can have acute and chronic toxic effects. Also substances such as some pharmaceutical and personal care products primarily entering the environment as wastewater effluents may also pose a threat to human health, aquatic life and other wildlife also. Now this last point, that pharmaceutical waste, pharmaceutical wastewater pollutant. It was very much in news. So all of these, they have an impact on the ecosystem as a whole, on the human health as a whole. Right. Thereafter, we need to tell what is the government regulations and initiative to tackle the wastewater management. But before that, we need to have some data, some facts with us. So as per Central Pollution Control Board, in 2021, India's current water treatment capacity is only 27.3% and sewage treatment capacity is 18.6%. Also, although India's waste and sewage treatment is higher than global average of around 20%, but still it is far, right? It is far from adequate. Also, 62.5% of wastewater in urban area, it remains what? It remained untreated or partially treated. So you can see it is more than 50%, 62.5%, right? Also, you can mention about Niti Aayog's report that India ranks what? India ranks 120 out of 122 countries in water quality index. So this has not been asked. Again, I am stating status of wastewater management in India. It has not been asked in the question, but I have given you different sets of data and reports. So you can use one or two, right? So as to substantiate your answer. Now coming to what are the regulations and the government initiatives. So we have different regulations with regards to wastewater management, and these are Water Prevention and Control Act, Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1974, and we have certain amendments. Similarly, Water Prevention and Control Cess Act 1977. Thereafter, Environmental Protection Act 1986. It actually empowers the central government to prescribe sewage and effluent discharge standards. Right. So these are the regulations, and what are the government initiatives? Government ने क्या किया with regards to this wastewater management? Think about Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. Think about Jal Jeevan Mission. Right. So Swachh Bharat Mission के बारे में आप बात कर सकते हैं. Thereafter, you can also talk about ODF status. You can mention about दो लाइन का हो. It has to be there. Right. क्योंकि conclusion पढ़ने के बाद में ही you would be allotted marks. Right. So, how have you concluded? Please comment down. How would you comment? How would you conclude the answer? Right. So, we have next question, and that reads, what is deep sea mining? What are the proposed methods to conduct deep sea mining? Thereafter, we need to mention the environmental concerns related to the industry. What are the environmental concerns?